This last tutorial is going to take a look at sharing and also the reporting side of nearpod. So I'm back in my lesson folder here, and I've just added another lesson which is actually from the staff development sessions last summer, and this was filled out by about 14-15 people, so we should have some content generated by students in this particular one. But I'm going to start with my Agile app, so the one we've just made, and I'm going to launch it as a live lesson. So this is for me to run with a group of students in class. So when I click on live lesson, it will give me a code. Now that code is really important. That is the code that students will use to access this particular lesson. So they go into nearpod.com and they type this code in. Again, in the overview video here, you get a sense of how that works. But I can choose to share that in a number of ways. So I can simply email it. I tend to do a screen grab and keep it in the folder with whatever content I have and put that up onto Blackboard. That's my particular way of doing it, but you could just as easily email that. That link will just take you into Outlook. Social media sort of gives you some pipelines to put it onto Twitter and things like that. That just gives me a link. So if I click on that, that just gives me a link that I can copy, and then I can post that link anywhere that's useful. Google Classroom, again, we're not really set up for Google Classroom at the moment, but that takes you into Google Classroom and you can choose your classes and anything that you've set up in there. And Remind is just a little reminder for students. Again, you can post that up on Blackboard. We're going to come out of this for a second and we're going to look at the second option, which is student paste. So when I set it up as a student paste session, I get the same set of options, different code, and you'll see that it is valid for a number of days. So this is one of the disadvantages of Nearpod, is that the lessons don't expire, but the pins do. So to get a student to come back 4 or 5 months later and attempt the same quiz, they have to come in under a new PIN number, which means they generate a new set of statistics. So the reporting, the analytics only have a life of about 30 days, and then you have to set up a new session. It is a little confusing, but you get used to it after a while. Quite usefully, the student paste lesson has an embed code. Now what that means is you can copy the HTML code here and you can put it straight into Blackboard or straight onto a Weebly site. The advantage there is you're not messing around with codes, you're not messing around with email links to students. They come in, they open Blackboard, and they're straight into maybe a quiz or a poll or something like that. So the best advice I can give you for learning the difference between live lesson and student paste is to generate a few, maybe just a collaborate board, or just share them amongst other staff members who are looking at Nearpod and just figure out the differences between the two of them. The other thing I wanted to turn your attention to is the reporting side of things. So if we go into the Tell for Technical Staff and into my little domino dots here, I have an option to go to reports. So if I click on reports, what I will get is that particular lesson, and clicking on that, these are the number of occasions where I launched a different pin. Now, what would actually have been happening here is this was me testing the lesson with myself or sharing it with 2 or 3 people just to make sure everything was working before I launched the lesson. So this is the actual staff development session. There were 12 students on it. And if I click on that session, I get a readout of all of the content that was generated during that session. So you can see I have quiz, poll, open-ended, draw it. Now draw it isn't something we looked at, but it's really simple. You simply use your mouse to draw onto the screen. Matching pairs, collaborate, time to climb. And if we go into quiz, there's no data, and that's because in this particular session I didn't use a quiz. But if we go into poll, you'll see I did set a poll, which was, which of the following tools have you used in your own teaching practice? So this was a similar session on Tell and Agile apps. So if I click on that, I get a readout, and these are all my options here, and I can actually tell who answered what. And over here, 32% had used lynda.com, 40% had used Blackboard, etc. Open-ended question. I talk about in staff development sessions using tell to take a monkey off your back. So to get that thing dealt with, that takes time. So housekeeping stuff, things that are time consuming. And I asked that question and most people had no answer. 8 people had free text. So those 8 people, and actually what it was I doubled them up at that point and I said I'd ask them to respond in pairs. If we go into the draw it function, use the mouse, draw a portrait of yourself or your team. So this is what the drawing function looks like, and these are all the drawings that came in. And then on the drawing function, you can also bring in an image. So I brought in an image of my family and had people write the names on top with the mouse. And that just gives me those options there. Matching pairs we didn't use. Collaborate wall. So what are the problems we have incorporating tell into our teaching practice? And I'll get a class board. And those are the responses I get. So this was people responding during the discussion, typing in what they felt. And I always encourage people to like, because the most liked posts go into the top left-hand corner. And it just gives you a sense of where people agree or which is, as somebody put up a particularly good response to the question. And then what are the learning needs of your students? And again, we have a class board there. And you can see cats in bags, bags in river. I think this was just done in a test and we didn't finish it. So that one isn't a great example. And if I want to, I can download this. So I can download it as a PDF. I can download it as a session view. And I can also over here share this. So I can simply put in an email address here and send it to somebody. So it may be that if I was team teaching or if there were 2 people jointly delivering on the day, I could share it back out to all the other students, but that would mean that every student would see everybody else's answers. So this reporting is very much on the behind that firewall, and this is for staff or session leaders to share, not necessarily sharing back out to students. If I download this as a PDF, and I just do it to my local drive, that'll take a second, and it should just download it. There we go. And as a PDF, that's how it looks. So it's quite nice. It's a good little record. And it's a good way of just keeping track of what you've done in class. In the nearpod overview video, you'll see there is a way for students to set up notes so that students can do a similar thing, but they will have emailed back to them their own response plus anything that goes onto a Collaborate board. So you can do it in a way that it doesn't make students vulnerable or expose anyone, but the student can take their notes away with them. And there's also a little function, which I demonstrate in that overview, where they can add their notes, their own notes as they go through a nearpod session, and that can be really useful as well.